complete leader, but what is a complete leader? Because I know if you were to go to somebody and say, "Hey, you're a leader," and they're going to say,
You gotta love everybody.
not just that, but
Yeah.
I'm a person, not a
Right.
system.
Right.
I'm an individual.
Right.
So, what are you telling me that leadership is a system? Well, how does a human translate that into I'm also being paid to be a leader? And then I guess just love. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I could live with that, but I can see a lot of people not living with that. What
Right.
is leader in a systems?
Well, we have to make the distinction between I have a position of leadership in an organization. And so therefore, as a country, we spend upwards of $50 billion a year on leadership development. They're really talking about trying to develop me in some way. And there's zero evidence that any of it has any organizational ROI whatsoever. So there is me as a individual operating within an organization or just operating as a human being and trying to influence the world around me. Um, on the other hand, if we look at leadership from the standpoint of the organization, so we look at the whole idea of leadership through the lens of the organization, now we're talking about institutional capability. And so building a leadership system builds that institutional capability, which a guy named David Ulrich out of, I think, Michigan State University, he's calculated that, and I would actually argue that it's more than this, that the value of building institutional capability, specifically institutional leadership capability, has a 4-to-1 benefit ratio over just building the individual capability. So if my organization sent me to leadership development training, that's going to help me become probably somewhat of a better person, I hope, or a better worker, a better leader, maybe. But if the institution builds leadership capability, it's going to get 4 times the value out of the investment.
And so, what does that look like? So, when you say I'm instead of developing the individual,
Mhm.
let's build a system, and I totally get that. But what does that system look like when you say, okay, I'm going to build a system that's going to drive leadership? Is that building committees? Is that building processes? Is it scheduling huddle meetings? What does that involve?
Yeah, so it's really all the above. So I like to say there's really 4 parts to the system. One is the employee experience. So the system leaders build the employee experience through the daily interactions with their subordinates. Um, and these days we talk about inclusion. We talk about you know psychological safety. We talk about the fearless organization. We talk about collaboration. Those are all parts of the employee experience. And the research is really clear that employee experience really is connected to the the relationship with the manager. And so that system has to show every individual manager and leader how to build those relationships. I also mentioned earlier that every organization, maybe with the exception of higher ed, has 3 resources: people, money, and knowledge. Well, how do we develop and build our people? Do we exclusively focus on the technical aspects of somebody's job, or do we also help them become better, more self-confident human beings? And organizations, I could name a few, actually has figured out how to do that, and they coach and teach and train their leaders how to build the self confidence of their subordinates. And you mentioned process. Well, leaders are involved with process every day. So when you improve a process, you're really improving the value of your financial assets. You're getting more money, more value out of your money. And when you do both of those, you're probably also going to be impacting your knowledge, because people will. Um, we know that the best innovation happens at the water cooler. When people are gathering at the water cooler, collaborating together, they get ideas, and innovation is seldom a light bulb moment of inspiration. It's a little sparklers going off until finally a whole idea comes together. And then we also know that systems operate on behaviors and rules and routines. So we're designing those behaviors, designing those rules. Every organization has way too many rules. Most of them are nonsense. So get rid of those, design a handful of rules that really make sense, that are important. And then the other thing we know about systems is that they all have feedback loops. That's a fancy way of saying that systems to some degree are self-replicating and self-monitoring. What do we call that in an organization?
Assessment.
Annual performance review, for lack of a better,
right.
So
bringing some sort of assessment into it. Yeah.
Some kind of assessment, exactly. And so high impact organizations, they don't do just a simple checklist, yeah, you performed well, whatever. The most interesting one that I found, I actually found it twice, where two different hospitals, they actually grade their managers in part off of the level of employee engagement of their staff.
That's a good indicator.
Yeah. So if their levels of employee engagement are, both of them were like right around the 70% mark, then they were fine. But if they dropped below that, they would be, the hospital would hire at their own expense a coach to come in and start coaching that manager. And if it dropped too low, they would probably, replace them if the manager didn't replace themselves.
They'd can him. Let's just say it. They'd can his ass.
Well, actually, both of them said we never fired anybody. They all said most of the time the manager would take themselves out of that role because they realized that they were not ready for the role. They couldn't be successful.